Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Public Works Finance Committee meeting for Monday, January 28th, 2019. Our first item of business on today's agenda is approval of the Public Works Finance Committee minutes from January 14th.
I think they look fine.
Same.
Okay, I think we're all in agreement on that, so consider those approved as presented. Item number 2 is a public meeting. It's a proposed lot line adjustment and lot division, 1821 and 1831 East F Street. Leah Carlson will tell us the parameters on that.
All right. Hello. All right. So as you said, we have a proposed lot line adjustment and lot division at the address 1821 through 1831 East F Street. The subject property is located just east of the intersection of Mountain View Road and East F Street, located here in red. And so these show the current parcels. So there's currently 2 parcels of 13,210 square feet in size. And there's also this other parcel down here of 54,283 square feet. So the proposal first is to move the southern lot line to the south by approximately 17 feet, expanding these 2 parcels to 14,615 square feet each. And then the second proposal is to do a lot line division, and it would separate these 2 parcels into 4 parcels of 7,000 square feet each, and then 7,615 square feet each. And as you can see, they're mirrors of each other, and leaving a remainder parcel of 51,473 square feet. The subject properties are located within the R3 zoning districts. In this zoning district, the minimum lot size for any housing type is 7,000 square feet, and the minimum lot width for any housing type is 60 feet. The proposed lot sizes and lot widths meet both of these minimums. Per city policy for lot divisions, residents within 600 feet of the subject property have been notified of the proposal and may be present here in the audience today to testify, but staff recommends approval of the proposed lot line adjustment and lot division with no conditions. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions, anybody? Arthur?
Always. Less the flagpole, what's the size of the 2 lots being created?
Without the flagpole portion, well, so it's 20 feet. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I have to calculate it. So 112 feet times 12, by 20 times 2. So I don't have a calculator with me.
So it sounds like about 4,000 something feet more or less remaining?
Yes, about.
Yeah. Okay, just wondering.
Okay, sure.
So, yeah. Just a comment, I suppose, but I am against flagpoles. I hate them. I think they're bad planning, but given the existing nature of the parcels and the lots, I don't think there's a lot of choice if somebody wants to develop these. So I have to bite my tongue about flagpoles and say it makes reasonable sense, but so anyway, guess we should hear from people here.
Yes. So we're going to take public comment on these line adjustments. If anyone wants to come to the table and speak about that, please come on up.
I think I can see.
Could we have your name and address, please?
Harvey Hewitt, 2003 Eileen Drive.
Thank you.
Moscow. I think I can see the concept here, but what about the southernmost portion of that lot? What are the implications for that part of the part that's not addressed?
It would just be reduced in size, so it would be up for future development if the property owner would desire to do so. Sure, yeah.
Yeah, that one.
51,473. So what are the implications for that lot for access in the future? Would it be by Eileen Drive or F Street?
It would depend on what the property owner wanted to do. I mean, it would definitely be a possibility to create access off of Eileen Drive, but it just depends, and it's hard to speculate on that.
I understand this is not the subject of this particular meeting, but on the very southern portion, when the, I don't know who brought the field dirt in, maybe the city did from one of the school projects, but they built that whole lot up, the whole parcel, pretty high, and the back end was so high that it flooded the backyards of the houses all the way up to almost to the power line. And so the city, we complained, and the city came in or someone came in and took a backhoe and cleared that out. So our concern is to make sure that whatever happens in that other southern portion not lead to flooding. And so that's a future thing, I understand that. But the other is that children who live up in the Moser district that go to this school and the other school, they just come in a big long line right down Eileen Drive. And I don't know what the implications would be for their access to the school there or the junior high and getting access to those areas. But so the future, that other lot is the one that I would have concern about, and I guess we'll have a chance to talk about it at a future time.
Possibly. I mean, what we're doing here is just a lot line adjustment and lot division, so if the property owner chooses to develop it in the future, that would be up to their discretion, I would say.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please come on up.
My concern is for this.
Yeah.
Speak in the microphone.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. My concern is for the, north of the lot that's going to be developed, the 51,473 square feet. Our whole subdivision on Eileen Drive was designed to drain from east to west. And so then they put in all this fill dirt, like my husband said. And so when they were bringing it in, I went down and talked to the people who were bringing it in, and I said, look, our subdivision is supposed to drain from east to west, and you're putting all this fill dirt in. What are we going to do? And so he said, oh, no problem. We've got a drain at the very back of this lot that will drain all of that. Well, as you can see, it didn't work out that great.
And who told you that, ma'am?
The person, there was a city person there, and the person who was bringing the fill dirt in, so I asked him, and he said, well, we've had him put this drain in at the very back of this lot. And, but, it hasn't worked out that well for us who are on Eileen Drive to have that great big massive amount of fill dirt in there, and then the drainage, if we have flooding, it would flood all of us people back on Eileen Drive with the fill dirt there if they don't address that issue when they build.
Seems silly, but could you give us your name and address again?
Yeah, Cheryl Hewitt, it's spelled Hughett, and we are on 2003 Eileen Drive.
Thank you.
So that is our concern, and then we're concerned about future adjustment on that. Martha Zucker could probably address that a little bit better than me. She lives on one lane. And the amount of traffic it would bring when that southern lot is developed on our narrow little street, which the public works people who come get garbage and plow streets can hardly get up and back and forth anyway. So anyway, just for future concern, we would really like that to be addressed when that is, brought up.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak regarding this lot line adjustment or possible effects of it? Okay.
I have a couple questions. Leah, what zone is this?
This is in the R3 zoning district, so, yeah.
And then it looks like the 4 properties to the east they also have flag lots on them.
Correct.
Are those single-family homes? Do you know?
I'm not sure. They appear to be possibly twin homes, but I'm just speculating. I'm not sure.
The neighbor's
Moscow
property,
Charter School is one of those adjacent to that, isn't it?
That's to the west.
It looks to be in line with the characteristic of the street to me, and I would move that we approve the lot line adjustment.
Okay, I guess we'll forward this to council with a recommendation for approval.
Consent agenda?
Yes, sir?
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Leah.
All right, thank you.
Thank
and
you,
I have
Leah.
another one here.
We have another proposed lot line adjustment at 1627 to 1733 and 1745 to 1751 East 3rd Street. This is in the new Harvest Hills subdivision, if I'm correct.
Correct, yes.
And I note for the record that it is not a public meeting like the last one because it's not a lot division.
Yes. So yes, we have proposed lot line adjustments to several lots, address 1627 to 1733 and 1745 to 1751 on East 3rd Street. The proposal is to realign lot lines to better accommodate for new twin home designs in the Harvest Hills development, impacting a total of 12 lots and 8 lot lines. This shows the lots that will be impacted, and there's only one lot here that's not impacted at all. And the blue lines show the lot lines that are being slightly adjusted. And all the lots are located again in the R3 zoning district. And in this district for, twin homes, the minimum lot area is 3,250 square feet and the minimum lot width is 30 feet. Twin homes also require 8-foot side yard setback. And so with all those considered, this is the plan showing how all the lots meet these requirements. So staff recommends approval of the proposed lot line adjustments, again, with no conditions. If you have any questions.
What's kind of the average adjustment? Because the blue lines seem to be very much on top of the black lines there, so it doesn't look like they're much.
So they're just by a couple feet. Yeah, the original lot lines interfered just, again, by a couple of feet with the twin home designs, and then they redid the designs and it was off, and so they just had to adjust it just slightly. Some of them are, just a couple of feet, some of them are about a foot, so it's pretty minimum.
In other words, about the width of the line that's up there on the
Yeah,
screen.
pretty much, yes. Yeah.
So the purpose of the adjustment is just to, so that they will, with the designs that have been come up with for the buildings there, that it would meet all the parameters that we need to. Okay.
Correct, yeah.
Good. Any other questions? Okay, I guess we could recommend approval of this lot line adjustment, since it's pretty minimal and...
Consent is on.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leah.
Thank you.
Item number 4 on today's agenda is the annual report for the 2018 farmers market season and a fee recommendation. Amanda Argona,
Sorry, one moment.
speaking up from behind the podium there.
Which button is the pressing? Sorry, battling a bit of a head cold.
So you're going to sit by me. Thanks.
So this was originally on Administrative Committee's agenda, and so I'm presenting to you the 2018 season report for the Moscow Farmers Market, in addition to the Farmers Market Commission's projects and recommendation for a fee proposal. So 2018 at a glance, we saw a couple of changes. I transitioned into this role full-time in July, with Daniel Stewart departing as market manager. In 2017, Daniel had looked at restructuring the fees for the farmers market vendors, and so this was the first year those were actually implemented. We had our new vendor handbook implemented, and then we had, I don't think this is the updated PowerPoint. We had 2 resolutions that were implemented for June 2018. We have the dogs, pets, and other animals, as you all are aware, and then our nicotine-free market.
Quick question, can you remind us what the fee structure change looked like?
I can try. So the fee structure that was implemented for 2018 moved away from the season and walk-on vendor language that the market has historically had and went into a tier structure. So that was based on attendance for the vendors. So if my memory serves me correctly, that would be 1 to 8 markets would be Tier 1, 9 to 17 would be Tier 2, and 18 and above would be Tier 3. And each of those tiers had different registrations, and then day stall fees, half stall fees, table space fees associated. The idea being that Tier 3 vendors were typically what you would have known as your seasoned vendors. They pay the highest annual registration fee, but have the lowest day fees implemented, just to give a brief overview. Thank you. So for programming, our AmeriCorps member worked closely with our Safe Routes to School. That was Janine Eslick. She finished her term at the end of September. We had 26 paid musicians and 21 non-paid musicians. We originally scheduled 6 demonstrations for Chefs at the Market, but we're only able to implement 4. But in those 4, we had 107 people participate. Again, Chefs at the Market's always really popular. And then we directed 298 plus dogs with the new change. And when we say redirect, that means just asking them to move out of the main thoroughfare to either the eastern or western sidewalks. And as you can see, we had some minor defecation instances with dogs at the market. We continued our programming with the University of Idaho College of Ag and Life Sciences, and so that's just a brief snippet of what they provided for both youth and adults at the market. I'm going to move into some historic data. So first I'll show you the historic data, and then we'll move into the 2018 data. So as you can see, our overall vendor count numbers have generally stayed between that 125 to 135 range. And with our new definitions, these will look slightly different, but craft is up there, along with, if you look at combining our produce and meat, and then value added has had different definitions changed over the years, including food as well. So you might think 2014 there were definitely prepared food vendors. Well, that's because they were under the value added category at the time. Some more historic data for sales reports. This is all before my time, so it's basically just taking stuff from years prior and putting it together, and this is aggregate sales. So moving forward for 2018, you can see we have the new categories. We have what you call the artisan and craft vendor category. Agriculture now encompasses both the meat or livestock vendors in addition to value-added vendors, for instance, folks who might raise sheep and then process their fiber to actually sell at the market. That originally used to be included in the craft category, but if I'm a farmer raising those animals and then processing for value-added products, it's really an agricultural product. And so we've had, as you can see, the vendor counts look a little bit different from previous years, and then prepared and processed foods is a little bit closer to what we historically have seen. But again, we're seeing at that 125 vendor roster count from last year, and our aggregated sales are closer to what they were in 2016. So some more historic data regarding the financial assistance programs at the market. This is what we call the SNAP EBT, or we also have Fresh Bucks. Those are incentives that we provide. The market's also authorized to take WIC checks and Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program as we border the state of Washington. Moving into 2018, we're actually a little bit ahead of the game, so we don't have a lot of numbers up there because those numbers haven't been reported out yet. So we don't have anything for WIC or Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program, but we hope to have those numbers again soon. But we have a really good redemption rate at the market. We had over $10,000 distributed to help those folks in those income brackets to shop the market, and just almost $10,500 redeemed. So again, some more historic data. Market costs and revenue. This was prior to the market branching off from the arts department. I'm sure some of you have seen these slides before. And then for 2008, this is not the updated one, I'm so sorry. So for 2018, if you focus on that middle column, 2018A is what we actually budgeted or spent, for the market. And so the vendor percentage and city percentage contribution is fairly close to what we thought we initially would budget. So the Farmers Market Commission is an active commission, and they have several projects that they've been working on. And again, I apologize, I had an additional slide on here that it clearly did not get updated. So current projects are the Watauga County Historical Society Oral History Project. We are reviewing the craft and food jury process. Downtown Business Survey is in process with 3 commission members surveying downtown businesses. Farm site visits are scheduled for the 2019 season, so we will be contacting vendors with that schedule. Rapid market assessment. The Farmers Market Commission did 2 rapid market assessments, one in July 28th, and then the other one August 11th, and then we had a customer count on September 8th. And that report is forthcoming in March. Also forthcoming are handbook revisions and updates for the 2019 season, and then the fee review and proposal. And again, I apologize that the update slide isn't in here, but we had a fee subcommittee break off from the Farmers Market Commission, and we worked together to come up with several different proposals. No change, minor incremental increases, and after reviewing everything, the Farmers Market Commission voted to not have a fee increase for the 2019 year as their proposal, because they felt like with the 2018 changes in the tier structure, the new online registration system, that it was very confusing for some of the vendors, and they wanted to give the vendors more time to adjust to that process going into the 2019 season. So that was the reasoning for the recommendation, and staff supports that. I had a lot of feedback from vendors not quite understanding what it meant to add additional days, or if that bumped them up to different brackets, and so I worked with quite a few of them to get to the points that they felt comfortable, and especially if they were asking for additional days. Again, it was just very confusing on whether or not they were locked into Tier 1, even though they were attending 10 markets. And so we support the recommendation moving forward for 2019. That's everything. I will stand for questions.
Gary has a question.
Farmers Market just completed a strategic plan within the last year, correct? In that strategic plan, as I recall, there were some goals and strategies for fee adjustments. And is the Farmers Market Commission abandoning the strategic plan?
No, they're not abandoning it. They just felt that with the 2018 changes, that they wanted to give vendors one more year before, well, I shouldn't say one more year, they said some time, and so I can get some clarification on how much time they feel like needs to be elapsed, but they felt like that to ask for additional changes when the first tier structure was not explained thoroughly to vendors would be asking a lot.
Yeah, and I guess my comment would be that I don't believe that the tier structure wasn't explained. They may not have perceived it the way that it was, because it was recommended by the Farmers Market Commission. So I guess my concern is for the commission to recommend no fee increase when the strategic plan calls for it. I'd rather see the council allow a suspension or a delay for implementation of the fee increase strategy, rather than just say we're not going to have an increase in perpetuity until this happens again, in conformance with the strategic plan.
So Gary is exactly right. What we had looked at with the fee structure for the market was not explainable at all in its previous form. There was, it's one of those things with the farmer's market that grew very organically, served us very well for quite some time, but when we got to the level that we're at now, made it more difficult to manage. When we made the adjustment to the tier structure, we effectively leveled the playing field. So a vendor coming in would know how to participate at whatever level they would like to. They could self-choose that. There were some benefits if you attended for longer, more days in the season, you'd get your guaranteed spot, some of those types of things. With an eye in the strategic plan to A, level the playing field, evaluate how that works, and then what the commission would like to do next is look at more of a long-term fee increase implementation to determine and give vendors a little bit more clarity and reassurance as to what they will see year after year instead of year to year. Our fee project with the strategic plan did take us out of sync with the fee resolution that we pass with the budget typically as well. And so this would be hopefully, if there was a fee recommendation or what that may look like, this was hopefully our last one to do out of sync as we would get back into cycle with the budget as well. And I think Gary's got a good point in taking that suspension of a year, not necessarily, and I didn't get the impression from the commission that they were looking for in perpetuity, but they felt we had a lot done in the last year, and vendors saw their new handbook, the new fee structure, the online reporting tools, online registration, those types of things, just to take a moment and pause, work us through the 2019 season, which would also provide the time for the commission and subcommittee to look at that longer-term fee structure and what that might look like for increases.
And I think my point is not that maybe it should be delayed, and that's certainly the commission and the staff are more qualified to talk about that. But I think what you'll hear from administration is we implement strategic plans, we spend a lot of time on them, and to have an immediate deviation from the strategic plan is a little bit odd. And the commission, I'm assuming, will come back to the council at some point as we continue that discussion as to what is the utility of the farmer's market compared to how much recapture there should be of the cost of running the market on the vendor. So that discussion is going to continue. So I think this is well taken, but I just want to make sure that as we choose to implement or deviate from the strategic plan, we understand that's what we're doing, and then we take steps to deal with it down the road.
Right. So when the commission decided to go to the tier structure, it made it, while the handbook is way more readable than it used to be, and there was a lot of work went into that, and it did clean up a lot of misunderstandings, but the tier system is more complex. And I remember when Daniel was here, we sort of worked on, and I don't know if it ever went anywhere because he left, but on a slide card kind of a fee calculator that you could give to the vendor that would say, if I'm in tier 1, this is how many days I want, and it would say, and they could add whether they had electricity, whether it was a corner spot, whether it was a pass-through spot, whatever, and you could slide that card up and down so and tell you what your total cost was. And maybe that, if we had something like that, or a spreadsheet kind of thing where you could, online, where you could put that in and people could see instantaneously what their fee would be in various scenarios, that they would...
Amanda actually put something together, and so Daniel helped us through our fee structure revisions, and we looked at it 17 million different ways. Amanda came in and she did put together that spreadsheet, and she brought it in and showed it, and I went, oh, that's what we were looking for last year that we couldn't put our finger on. So I think we've made some good progress in explaining that. We used a calculator that was somewhat helpful, but now with the new website as well, we've got some other options, and then with the software that we use as well. It is becoming much simpler and easier. It's just a lot of change.
I would say the vendors that came on later in the season had an easier time actually implementing, like choosing their dates and understanding the tier structure. So like new vendors, like people who had never attended our market before. And even with the changes to the online management system as well, they were just able to pick up on it quicker. And so my goal is to continue to make sure the vendors have resources, but let them know that like other vendors, are resources too if they have questions. But I have all the Excel spreadsheets you could ever imagine regarding fee implementation in different structures, and so I think that could be really helpful in going a long way with some of the vendors. I know Daniel had put together sort of this small formula in the handbook that vendors could do themselves, but we found that some vendors thought, well, I'm attending this many days, but I am here, and so there were lots of questions moving forward that we definitely had to clarify before the end of the season, and I think this year with the vendor orientation, it will be easier to implement as it's going into its second season.
So your fee structure, tier system spreadsheet, you can take that in like a pad like this around to a vendor and say, how many days do you want?
Yep.
And you can show them instantly now.
Exactly.
So I think that will clear it up a lot, because people don't want to do math, they want to get the answer. And so if we can simplify that to the point where what attributes do you want in your stall, and then show them how much that's going to cost, and how that would change if they changed one or the other of the inputs there, that would be very helpful and simplified, and people will be able to minimize their cost, and we'll be able to see whether or not we're improving our payback on the city services, or whether we're not.
Sure.
Well, one note, with the new fee structure that was implemented in 18, we've now got a sense of, really we're hoping to level the playing field, and ideally we wouldn't see any change in revenue. Same amount of vendors, level the playing field, and that did work out really well. It was a nice to see that number at the end of the year, to see that it worked exactly the way it did. Vendors, we didn't lose vendors in the transition. So the fee structure, I think, works well. I think just the appetite for additional change, given how much has happened, just taking the summer to really think out what, they've talked anywhere from 3 to 5 year increased plan, what that might look like. Also taking into consideration some of the costs for the market have decreased as we've restructured. So taking a look at what that new scenario is like, and how we can work with that philosophy, like Gary mentioned, with the city's participation in the market, the vendors' participation, and so forth.
Also, we don't know if we're having how many new vendors we might get this year, and how might that affect revenue under the current scheme, right?
Correct.
So,
And relative to the commission itself, giving some extra time doesn't add a lot of predictability to what's coming down in the future, so rather than a nebulous temporal deadline, it'd be nice to have an actual date. And just a question, it has nothing to do with the fee structure or anything. What category do the wine guys come under, and how's that gone?
It depends. If you're a I want to say someone like Coulter's Creek, they produce some of their grapes. It would depend on how much they're producing. So if you are, and we don't have a set percentage, we just say majority of. So for instance, with Canis Prairie Winery as an example, he falls under the processed prepared food category, because he's not actually growing those items himself to then produce into a value-added product. So again, no hard percentage, but we say majority of. So if there's someone down in the valley, in the LC Valley, that is growing most of their grapes, we can actually go to their vineyard and tour it. Then they would fit into that value-added agricultural category.
The problem with that is a lot of the vineyards, depending on which bottle of wine you're talking about, have grapes from right there in the backyard or out in the corner. And how do you balance that as an overall recommendation for a single winemaker? It gets really sketchy.
Yes, I think some of our categories do have that fine line that we have to balance a little bit.
Yeah. But overall, how did the wine booths go?
We have one regular, again, Canis Prairie Winery. I do have someone on the docket that would, I think, go through the craft and food jury process again, because they don't fit that category of producing the majority of the grapes to make the wine. So they would fall into the prepared food, processed food, non-ag category.
Was it part of the discussion that we might be at risk of losing vendors with the fee increase this year? Or what were some of the factors that went into their decision to not recommend implementing that?
I don't think it was loss of vendors. I think it was mostly just to have another season under their belt to feel comfortable with those major changes that happened. Again, what comes with this is sort of right-sizing the market too with the vendors. I think part of the discussion from the season and walk-on vendor language was that some of these walk-ons were attending just as much as seasoned vendors, yet they were paying really high fees, and so now we give that opportunity to them. And what we might be finding, like I can look back in the data and say, you know, they signed up to be this because they thought they could attend the 18 markets, but what we found is they could really only be in the 15. And so we have that data to now go back to the vendors and say, you know, you signed up for Tier 3, but really, based off of your attendance from last year, like, Tier 2 might be a better fit for you, and you might save some money in the long run, or there is a breaking point in that Excel spreadsheet that I noticed of where we're seeing that breaking point, whether or not you're Tier 2 going into Tier 3 and Tier 1 going into Tier 2 as well. I think that answered your question. Yes.
I guess at this point I move that we accept the report, and I assume you're going to be giving this report at the council next Monday for council to approve, and we can vote on at that point. So I think that's a regular agenda item since it will be a report in any event, right?
Perfect.
I appreciate all of the metrics and all of the work that y'all are doing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, number 5 on today's agenda, Area of City Impact Agreement Amendment, and Mr. Belknap's going to tell us about that, how we're going to cooperate with the county on this.
Good afternoon, Bill. So, underneath Idaho code, it does require that cities and counties work together to establish an area of city impact around the city and to identify essentially what future land use plan, comp plan applies in that area, what land use ordinances, regulations apply, and essentially the boundary of that area. And it's really intended to try to help facilitate planning of the future growth of the city to provide and ensure that it's logical and orderly as it grows over time. The geographic area of the ACI is guided by a number of considerations identified in state law, including trade area, geographical factors, and areas reasonably expected to be annexed to the city in the future. So those are some of the general guidelines of the definition of the area. The comprehensive plans and ordinances that apply within the ACI can be either the county's plan and ordinances, the city's plan and ordinances, or other plans and ordinances as may be agreed to by both the city and the county through the ACI negotiation process. Our current ACI agreement really dates back and was adopted in 2006. We've had a few amendments over the course of time, a few code amendments the city has undertaken, a few times we've amended to address issues that have come up in the area of city impact. But that really was the date that the current agreement was established. The city's role in the ACI, beyond just jointly agreeing on the comp plan and the ordinances that would apply in the ACI, is largely advisory. So any land use applications or other developments that may occur in their city impact, it just provides an opportunity for the city to provide comments to the county on that application. The county does have that final jurisdiction and final decision-making authority within the area of city impact. It does also establish the process and procedures for reviewing administrative requests or quasi-judicial applications. So right now in the area of city impact, if there's a building permit that's submitted, that gets routed down to our office to do a review against the zoning, provide a recommendation to the county, and the county makes a final decision about whether that permit should be issued and whether it meets the zoning code as adopted in the area of city impact. And very similarly with quasi-judicial rezone or subdivision plat, again, same process would occur. It get forwarded down to the city's planning and zoning commission would conduct a hearing and provide a recommendation to the county, and the county would have the final decision-making authority. We've had a few discussions beginning in 2015 about the area city impact. We were approaching that 10-year mark on the agreement, and at that point point in time, we decided to wait until we wrapped up the transportation plan and its assessment of the ring road concept. We also had some zoning code updates and comp plan updates that were anticipated to be upcoming, and so we decided to wait until those actions were completed before moving forward with that renegotiation. Last year, the City Council adopted some fairly substantial updates to the city zoning code. We've also done some updates on the comp plan and the future land use map. And the county approached us late last year with an interest to renegotiate it to adopt the city's current regulations as well as the future land use map as the Plan and Zoning Commission had developed. So let's just kind of map the gray area shows that's the city limits, so everything in the gray is within city Moscow, and then the green shaded area is the area city impact as it exists today. You see there are some other colors that show different zoning designations in that area, but that is the boundary. It's important to note about 88% of that area is zoned ag forestry, and that'll come up here in just a little bit. So the vast majority of that area is largely dedicated to agricultural uses and is zoned ag forestry currently today. So the proposed changes and updates would include the adoption of the city's comprehensive plan, accepting the future land use map, and adopting the current future land use map that the Plan and Zoning Commission has been working on developing and will be coming forward to the council here in the next couple of months for adoption. So it would adopt the comp plan, all the major elements, and the future land use map that the Plan and Zoning Commission has been working on. That was just intended to not have to re-amend the agreement once the county adopts the comp plan, or once the city, adopts the comp plan. It would also adopt the city's subdivision, mobile homes, RV park ordinances, some with some modifications, and our zoning code as well. The zoning ordinance, there would be a few items we modified, so the non-conformity section, we actually did a prior amendment here about almost 3 years ago to adopt the county's non-conforming language in the area city impact, so it would maintain that. Flood hazard areas, they would like to maintain their own flood hazard ordinance since they regulate that or manage that throughout the county. It's just for consistency in their regulations. They'd like to maintain that. They also did not wish to adopt our planning and development provision, and that is that they don't feel that those intense developments are appropriate in their city impact, that if that's going to occur, then it should be annexed into the city. It should be a development within the city limits where it can be served with city utilities, so they wish not to adopt our PUD provision only for that purpose. And then they will also adopt the sign code with some minor amendments related to content that they wish to make. So those were really, it's largely zoning code with those 4 items being modified.
Did you say they will accept the Moscow sign code?
Correct, yes. There were a few areas, so there was a few areas where it related to the content of the message, not necessarily the content of the message, but the classification of signage. And there was a Supreme Court ruling here a couple of years ago that questioned the ability to regulate different signage based on the institution that was represented. And so they just wanted to make a few tweaks just that they felt would be more conservative to defend legally should there be a challenge to the sign code. They weren't modifying any of the standards. There were just a couple of references to a type of sign that had a certain size limitation, and they wanted to remove that designation of that sign type. It would still have the same regulation, but they felt it would be safer to do so rather than to risk potential legal challenge on that. They would also adopt some additional codes, so our animals and fowl regulations that allows for, let's say, chickens and other small animals within residential areas appear in the police regulations in Title 10, and so we reference that in our zoning code, so they would adopt those, so that same option and opportunity would exist in the area city impact. The county wished, and part of the discussion was they wanted us to adopt their Ag Forest zoning district. As I mentioned before, about 88% of the area city impact is zoned Ag Forest. We currently have adopted their old Ag Forest zone from the late 90s. And so they wanted us to adopt their current Ag Forest zone district. So again, it would ease their administration of that area with the same code and the same standards largely. And so it would do so within the area city impact.
So they're in the area of impact, even though it's in the county, they would not allow roosters or pigs or things that we don't...
Unless it was in an agricultural zoning designation. So they're only going to adopt these for our residential zoning districts. So there would be 2 modifications, if I recall correctly, to the county's Ag Forest. So the one thing we really didn't necessarily want right at the edge of the city was salvage, wrecking, and junkyards, outdoor junkyards. So that would be eliminated as a use that was previously permitted underneath their Ag Forest zone with a conditional use permit. The other thing is we would reduce the animal unit numbers. I think they allowed by right up to 250 animal units, and depending upon the type of animal, whether it's a cow or a horse, it has a different animal unit count. We wanted to kind of just trim that down just a little bit, and this is for those larger animal operations. If it's right up against the city limit boundary, there could be some potential nuisance issues. We do oftentimes have fairly dense residential development right up against that agricultural land within the area city impact, and so we just reduced that down, and then I think we allowed it to exceed the 50 units with a conditional use permit, but it just allows that opportunity just to kind of manage it. It's probably not a problem out in the rural area in the county, but right up against the city limits, you could potentially have some issues with higher animal concentrations. We also would maintain the current 40-acre minimum lot size that exists in the Ag 4 zone. So really that is was a point of discussion in 2015. At that point in time, the county was looking at modifying their land division regulations to reduce it down to the minimum of a 10 acre per parcel to divide. And our concern at that point in time was fragmenting ownership in close proximity to city limit boundaries, and then it really can make it difficult or impede that logical and orderly growth. We have a very defined urban edge of the city where you have residential subdivision density type development up to many acres of undivided ag land, and that allows for that logical and orderly growth. If you start to break it up into 2, 3, 4, or 5 acre parcels, then you may end up having to leapfrog over that area for the next area that can be developed at a residential density. And so we really want to kind of maintain larger parcel sizes right at the edge of the county so they can be developed in a more efficient and compact manner. So we retain our current 40-acre parcel size limitation within the ag forest. Under our current code, we do allow a one-time division of an existing parcel of 40 acres or more, and so we would continue to allow that. So we weren't diminishing any current rights people have if they have an existing parcel to divide it, but we just aren't expanding the ability to break up property at the edge of the city. As part of that process, then we would adopt some portions of their land division process. That is, currently, when the county did that amendment, while they were reducing the minimum parcel size to be able to divide, they also required then the property owner to designate the building site that's no larger than 2 acres in size. And that site is to be dictated and directed in areas that preserve productive farmlands, streams, riparian areas, and other unique natural features. So that allows the county to try to ensure that the home site is placed in the appropriate location. As far as the ACI, would also add and allow for the logical extension of existing and planned roadways as shown on our future land use map as well. So if you're talking about division of a property at the edge of town, we really would not prefer to see the home site right in the middle of a future major roadway that would be extended at some point in the future, and they agreed that that would be a good thing to add to that section. As I mentioned, we would adopt the county's non-conforming use regulations, floodplain ordinance, and they also wish to maintain their rural residential driveway standards because we don't have those, as we don't encounter those very often. So those would retain. There will be no actual change to the ACI boundary at this point in time. However, we did include an additional notice and comment opportunity for any land use applications within 3/4 of a mile of the city limit boundary, which is very similar to what we have. It just would be a little bit less formalized. So if it's out beyond the ACI boundary, we would still have an opportunity to provide a comment on the land use application that would be coming in. The Lake County Planning and Zoning Commission conducted a public hearing on the proposed agreement on December 4th and recommended approval to the Board of County Commissioners. The board decided not to conduct additional public hearing. That is an optional step, and approved the proposed amended agreement in accordance with their Planning Commission's recommendation. The Moscow Planning and Zoning Commission also conducted a public hearing on this on December 12th and recommended approval to the City Council. Council does have the option of conducting a public hearing on the agreement, and staff is recommending that the council do so and that we conduct that hearing coming up at the February 19th meeting. With that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
So this agreement doesn't necessarily change any of the boundaries, just the rules under which the ACI operates?
Largely just updating the code that apply there. So we're adopting their current Ag 4 zone, they're adopting our current zoning code with a few minor modifications. We're maintaining that lot size, we're maintaining the boundary, because largely, again, we're just advisory, so we have an additional advisory opportunity out to that 3/4 mile distance. So it's largely an update just to the plans and ordinances that apply in the RC impact.
So if someone did want to create a PUD, what would their process be if they were in the ACI?
If they're in the ACI, they would not have that option, so they could subdivide. And really, the PUD allows you this greater flexibility to either minimize lot sizes or building heights or do more compact developments. So they just would not have that opportunity. They could do a standard subdivision and just meet the minimum lot size and setbacks in the zoning code, or if they were adjacent to the city limits. And really, if you're going to have that kind of intensity of development, they're going to need the city's utility services to do that, so then they would just annex the property in. And they would apply for annexation, they'd apply for the PUD and the accompanying subdivision plat, and then that would all get processed concurrently, and upon adoption and passage of the annexation ordinance, they would be in the city, and the city would take that approval action. So if they did not wish to annex, that opportunity would not exist. They could apply for a standard subdivision plat, but really anything that is beyond just a single-family home being built, oftentimes the county just feels it should be annexed, it should be served by the city. You know, that higher density development and growth should be directed to the city where we've got the utility services to be able to provide.
What's the process for requesting annexation look like?
It's a letter request, so the annexation process is fairly simple. It's a letter request to the city with the legal description of the property you wish to have annexed. It then gets referred to the Planning and Zoning Commission, who conducts a public hearing, and the commission is charged with recommending to the city council what's the appropriate future land use designation and zoning designation that should be applied to the property at the time of annexation. So they hold a hearing and come up with a recommendation. They forward that to the city council, and then city council conducts a public hearing on that as well, and then ultimately considers, passes a ordinance of annexation, a resolution for the land use designation, and an ordinance for the zoning designation of the property upon annexation. So if it was just an annexation without a rezone or subdivision plat, that would be the process. If there was a subdivision plat that came along with it, or a PUD, those all would be heard at the same time as well. And the decisions would be made in order of annexation, land use designation, zoning, subdivision plat, and PUD, if it involved all those elements.
Thank you.
Seems pretty sensible to me, and a good job has been done maintaining the city's interests and no salvage yards outside and things like that. So I think both sides have cooperated nicely and achieved a good compromise with the new proposed rules.
I agree. I think we should proceed with the public hearing on this at the 19th meeting.
Okay, sounds good. We'll get it noticed up.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 6 on today's agenda is U of I parking agreement revisions. Mr. Palmer is in charge of this.
Much as I'm in charge of anything, really, Mr. Ballard. I would also invite Becky Couch from the University of Idaho to join me for this.
Welcome, Becky.
Thank you.
All right. This one is not quite as complicated. The city has historically maintained an agreement with the University of Idaho to allow the University of Idaho to regulate parking on certain city rights-of-way within the university footprint. The main reason for this is just that the vast majority of the parking within that area is university parking, and so we allow the university to manage that through their parking structure and setup. And Becky is the director for transportation director?
Parking and
Parking and
transportation.
Transportation Director for the University of Idaho. And so this is just an update to that agreement. The university approached the city and asked us to consider the addition of 2 areas to the agreement. So 2 small areas that we would add to the designated areas that are within the university's approved areas for their regulation. And those areas are here on Railroad Street from Sweet Avenue to College, and then on College Street from Railroad to the creek crossing. Did I get that right?
Railroad to Deacon.
Oh, excuse me, this way. Yeah. From Railroad to Deacon this way.
There's no parking.
There's nowhere to park there. So there are a few spaces here, and then some of the spaces along here on Railroad. As this area is developed, we've had the ITC come in. We have the city's improvements to College Street here. The university occupies this building here. The university actually procured this property here. This seemed to make sense to us. The city maintains control over this segment of College Street here. With Kreitz being in this area, we felt like that was probably important that we maintain some just general public parking in this area as that's accessed by business. But otherwise, the other 2 proposed areas seemed to fall within the same category as the other rights-of-way that we have included in the agreement, and so staff's recommendation for this is that we allow the university to assume control over the parking regulations in those two areas. Becky, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Sure. I'd just briefly explain why it's important to the university that we add these to that MOU. And basically, just with our task of managing all campus parking resources, it presents challenges when we have areas of free and unregulated parking within the managed system. So really, it would just allow us to better distribute parkers in the area, and truly these are within the campus boundary. So that's basically the gist of why it's important.
So with that, we stand for any questions?
Mr. Greener.
Yeah, I would note, when we initially did this, the city maintained parking along all the public rights-of-way, Elm Street, some down Fraternity Row, a lot of places like that. When Carl Root was the Parking and Transportation Director, we implemented the program, I believe it was under Carl's watch, to go ahead and allow the university to regulate parking as part of an overall campus parking plan. As you'll notice if you read the agreement, it also includes return of revenues and that sort of thing. That was important to the university to be able to, I guess the idea, if I recall from Carl, was to make sure that optimal use was made of the university's parking resources, including their parking lots. And I believe he referred to it as guerrilla parking by students on city streets, undermine that effort. So Les brought this to, I believe he brought it to me early on last year, and then to Transportation Commission. And it seems like a logical extension. The stopping at Paradise Creek is a clear transition into what is more city, urban type use. College and Railroad to the west of the creek seem to fit right in with the campus plan. So seemed like a really good idea.
Yeah, I think that the citizens at large regard Paradise Creek as the boundary, and they kind of look at Railroad Street and College Street and think, well, that's still part of the university. And the guerrilla parking issue, everybody's very good about finding free and open guerrilla parking.
It's pretty amazing.
Walter Steve, we're still here. You can wax eloquent for hours.
We had the lot over by Gormley Park just earlier this year that there was this, just the slightest change to the surface associated with the sewer project, and all of a sudden there were 50 cars parked in there.
So I think it's a good, orderly thing to do to benefit both organizations, the city and the university.
Makes sense.
Okay, I guess we'll recommend approval of the attached amendment, and
Consent agenda is on.
yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Very much.
For your presentation. That seems to be the last item on our agenda for today, so entertain a motion to adjourn.
Let's go.
All right. Thank you all for attending.